Penelope stood in the wreckage of her perfect holiday party, trembling in her $400 heels, asking how I could be so cruel. She didn't realize the irony. 10 minutes ago, she was lecturing me on godly submissiveness, while her son wiped grease on my apron. She thought she was disciplining a broken daughter-in-law. She didn't know she was actually handing a loaded gun to the one person willing to pull the trigger. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I will never forget the specific timbre of my sister crying. It wasn't the soft, rhythmic weeping of someone watching a tragedy unfold on a movie screen, nor was it the sharp, chaotic intake of breath that comes with a sudden physical injury. This was something entirely different. It was a hollow, scraping sound, like a rusted machine trying to turn over one last time before the engine seized completely. It was the sound of a human soul that had been ground down to a fine powder. It was Christmas Eve, and I had curated the evening with the precision of a museum archivist. I had my heavy knit blanket, the one that cost too much but felt like a warm hug, draped over my legs. I had a mug of hot chocolate that was exactly 140 degrees, topped with 3 marshmallows. Not 2, not 4. The silence in my apartment was expensive and hard-earned. I was a single woman in the city, and this quiet was my trophy. I was just about to press play on a cheesy holiday rom-com, the kind where the bakery owner falls in love with the prince in disguise, when the knocking started. It wasn't a polite rap. It wasn't the rhythmic delivery knock of a courier dropping off a last-minute gift. It was a desperate, erratic pounding, a series of dull thuds against the wood that vibrated through the floorboards and straight into the soles of my feet. My first instinct was annoyance. I froze, mug halfway to my mouth, my brain cycling through the possibilities. A neighbor with a noise complaint? Unlikely. I was sitting in silence. A drunk wanderer from the holiday party downstairs? Possible. But the knocking didn't stop. It accelerated. It was frantic, terrified, the Morse code of someone running for their life. I set the mug down on the coaster, carefully, always carefully, and stood up. My heart began to hammer a strange rhythm against my ribs, a primal warning system that predated logic. I walked to the door, my socks sliding silently on the hardwood, and looked through the peephole. The fisheye lens distorted the hallway, bending the walls into a funhouse curve, but there was no mistaking the figure standing there. It was Danielle, my twin, my other half. But it wasn't the Danielle I knew. She was soaking wet despite the fact that it was snowing, not raining. She was shaking so violently that I could see the vibrations in her shoulders, even through the thick wood of the door. Her mascara had dissolved into black streaks that cut jagged paths down her cheeks, looking like war paint gone wrong. I unlocked the deadbolt. The metal click sounded like a gunshot in the quiet apartment. I threw the door open. "Chloe," she whispered. Her voice cracked on the vowel, splintering into 1,000 pieces. She looked at me, but I don't think she was really seeing me. Her eyes were wide, the pupils blown out, surrounded by sclera that was red and irritated. She looked like a cornered animal that had finally run out of territory. "I can't go back," she choked out, the words tumbling over each other. "I can't go back there. Please don't make me go back." She collapsed forward. I didn't think. I just moved. I caught her before her knees hit the floor, her weight dead and heavy in my arms. She smelled like cold air, old snow, and fear. Pungent, metallic fear. I dragged her inside. It was an awkward, stumbling dance, her feet tangling with mine as I kicked the door shut with my heel. I guided her to the couch, my sanctuary, now a triage unit, and pushed her down onto the cushions. My mind was racing, a ticker tape of worst-case scenarios streaming behind my eyes. Car accident, mugging, fire. But as I looked at her, really looked at her, those scenarios dissolved into something much darker. She was wearing a cardigan, a thin beige, pitiful thing that looked like it belonged to a librarian in the 1950s. It was freezing outside, easily 20 degrees, and she had driven here in cotton and synthetic blends. No coat, no scarf. "Dee," I said, my voice steady, a calmness I absolutely did not feel forcing its way through my throat. "You're safe. You're here. Just breathe." She was hyperventilating, short, shallow gasps that didn't fill her lungs. Her hands were clutching her chest, clawing at the fabric of that hideous sweater. "I need to get you warm," I said, more to myself than to her. I needed a task. I needed a problem I could solve with logistics because the emotional radioactive waste radiating off my sister was too much to process instantly. I reached out to pull the wet cardigan off her shoulders. "Let's get this off. I'll get you a hoodie." She flinched. It wasn't a subtle movement. It was a violent recoil, her whole body jerking away from my touch as if my fingers were red-hot pokers. She pulled her arms into her chest, crossing them protectively. "Don't," she whimpered. "Dee, you're freezing," I said gently, reaching out again, slower this time. "I'm just helping." I peeled her hand away from her chest. Her skin was ice-cold, clammy, and pale. And then I saw it. As the sleeve of the beige cardigan rode up her arm, it revealed the skin of her wrist. I stopped breathing. The air left the room. It wasn't just a bruise. A simple bruise is an impact, a clumsy mistake, a bump against a door frame. This was architecture. This was deliberate. 4 distinct oval-shaped contusions wrapped around the delicate bones of her wrist. They were dark purple at the center, fading to a sickly yellow-green at the edges, the unmistakable signature of fingers digging into flesh with crushing force. On the other side of her arm, a single larger bruise marked where a thumb had leveraged the grip. It was a bracelet of violence. I stared at it. My brain tried to reject the visual data. Danielle was married to Blake. Blake, the charming accountant with the straight teeth and the firm handshake. Blake, who bought her flowers on Tuesdays. Blake, who opened doors. "Who did this?" I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, low, guttural, dangerous. Danielle looked down at her wrist as if she had forgotten it was there, or perhaps as if it belonged to someone else. She traced the purple marks with her other hand, a ghost of a touch. "He didn't mean to," she whispered. The automatic defense, the reflex. "Who?" I demanded, though I already knew. The name tasted like battery acid in my mouth. "Blake," she said. The name fell out of her mouth and shattered on the floor between us. He wanted me to listen. I felt a sensation I had never experienced before. It wasn't anger. Anger is hot. Anger is fiery. This was cold. This was absolute zero. It started in my stomach and froze my veins outward. I looked at the fingerprints on my twin sister's skin, and I knew, with absolute crystalline certainty, that I was going to ruin a man's life. I went to the kitchen. I needed to put physical distance between myself and the violence sitting on my couch, or I was going to put my fist through the drywall. I turned on the kettle. The whistle of the boiling water gave me something to focus on, a singular high-pitched frequency that drowned out the roaring in my ears. I made tea. Earl Grey, 2 sugars. The way we used to drink it when we were teenagers studying for finals at 3 a.m. I carried the mugs back to the living room, my hands steady only through sheer force of will. Danielle had stopped shivering, but she was staring at the blank television screen with a 1,000-yard stare that terrified me. I sat down next to her, close enough to offer warmth, but far enough not to trigger that flinch reflex again. "Talk to me," I said softly. "Start from the beginning, and don't you dare tell me he didn't mean to." She took the mug, wrapping both hands around it as if it were the only anchor in a storm. She took a sip, the steam fogging up her glasses. It wasn't one big thing," she said, her voice raspy. "It was erosion, like water dripping on a stone." "Blake?" I asked. "Penelope," she corrected. I blinked. Penelope, her mother-in-law, the woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and sent thank you cards for thank you cards. She started coming over every day, Danielle said, looking down into the dark liquid of her tea. At first, I thought she was being nice. Toxic benevolence, you know. She'd come in and say, "Oh, honey, you look so tired. Let me show you how to organize the pantry properly so you're not so overwhelmed." That doesn't sound... It sounds helpful. Danielle cut me off, a flash of her old spark appearing for a microsecond before vanishing. But it wasn't. She would rearrange my entire kitchen. She threw away my spices because they weren't the brand she uses. She told me that the way I folded towels was disrespectful to the fabric. She'd run a finger over the baseboards and then just sigh. Not say anything. Just sigh like my dust was a personal failing. I tightened my grip on my own mug. "Why didn't you tell her to get out?" "I tried," Danielle said, shrinking back into the couch. "I told Blake, and he said his mother was just trying to help me become a wife of substance, that I should be grateful she cared enough to mentor me." "Mentor you?" I scoffed. "You're 30 years old. You have a degree in graphic design. You're not an apprentice." "She made me quit the design job," Danielle whispered. My head snapped up. "What?" "She told Blake that a working wife was a sign that the husband couldn't provide. She said it was embarrassing for the family. So he made me quit, said I needed to focus on the home, on the family." "And you did it?" I asked, trying to keep the judgment out of my voice and failing. "You don't understand, Chloe." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "It happens so slowly. You don't wake up one day in a cage. They build the bars around you one by one, and they smile the whole time they're welding them shut." Penelope would tell me, "Oh, look at how stressed you are with work. It's making you age prematurely. We just want you to be radiant." They made it sound like they were saving me. I listened to her describe a woman I had only met at the wedding, a woman who I remembered as stiff but polite. Now, through Danielle's eyes, I saw a predator, a woman who used courtesy as a cudgel, who weaponized help to strip my sister of her autonomy, piece by piece, until the only thing left was this shell in a beige cardigan. "Okay," I said, processing the information about the mother. "Penelope is a nightmare. We knew that. But Blake, D, the bruise." I gestured to her wrist. Danielle pulled her sleeve down, hiding the evidence. "He changed too. Or maybe he didn't change. Maybe the mask just slipped." "When?" "After the wedding. It was like, once the contract was signed, the sales pitch ended. He stopped asking me what I wanted for dinner and started telling me what was expected on the table. He stopped asking about my day and started checking if I'd completed his list." "His list?" "He leaves me lists," she said, dulls, chores, errands, pick up dry cleaning, polish the silver, call the plumber. And if I didn't finish it, the snapping." "The snapping?" I repeated, confused. "He snaps his fingers," Danielle said, demonstrating with a weak, trembling motion. "If I'm talking too much, or if I'm not moving fast enough, or if I say something illogical. He snaps his fingers at me like I'm a dog that needs to heal." I felt a vein in my forehead pulse. The disrespect of it was so visceral it made my teeth ache. Snapping fingers. It was such a small, petty gesture, but it implied a hierarchy so absolute it made me nauseous. "And the wrist?" I pressed. "How did we get from finger snapping to assault?" Danielle closed her eyes. A tear leaked out, cutting a fresh track through the dried mascara. "We were at Penelope's last week, a practice dinner for Christmas. I brought wine, red wine, a nice Merlot." "Okay." "Blake had apparently told me to bring white. I don't remember him telling me. Maybe I forgot. Maybe he never said it. But when we walked in and I put the red wine on the counter, Penelope looked at it and said, 'Oh, I suppose that will have to do, even if it doesn't pair with the fish.'" I rolled my eyes. "God forbid." "Blake lost it," Danielle whispered. "Not in front of her." He smiled, grabbed my arm, and said, "Let's help Mom in the kitchen, honey." He dragged me into the pantry. He squeezed so hard I thought my radius was going to snap. He got right in my face and hissed that I was embarrassing him, that I was incompetent, that I couldn't even follow simple instructions. She looked at her wrist again, rubbing the fabric over the tender skin. He held me there for 2 minutes while he lectured me. He didn't let go until I started crying. And then he kissed my forehead and told me he only gets angry because he knows I can be better, that he pushes me because he loves me. That's not love, I said, my voice sharp. That's conditioning. I know, she sobbed. I know that now. But in the moment, you feel like you deserve it, like you really are stupid for bringing the wrong wine. I looked at the woman sitting on my couch. We shared the same DNA. We had the same face, the same eyes, the same stubborn chin, but she had been hollowed out. Blake had treated her like a fixer-upper house, stripping it down to the studs to rebuild it in his own image. I wanted to kill him. It wasn't a figure of speech. I imagined driving to their suburban fortress and burning it to the ground, but fire was too quick. Fire was too clean. So you ran, I said. Tonight. Why tonight? What happened today that was worse than the wine? Danielle let out a bitter, jagged laugh. The turkey mandate. The what? Penelope called this morning. She decided that she's too delicate to host Christmas dinner this year, but she doesn't want to travel, so the dinner is at Blake's house, my house, their house. Okay, I said slowly. That sucks, but 15 people, Danielle said, her eyes widening with the memory of the panic. 15 people. Tomorrow. And I have to cook everything. But not just cook. I have to cook her recipes. She sent over a binder, a literal binder, Chloe. 47 items. Everything from scratch. The turkey, the sides, the bread, the specific type of cranberry sauce that takes 4 hours to reduce. That's impossible, I said. Nobody can do that alone in 24 hours. I told Blake that, she said. I told him I was overwhelmed. I told him I wanted to see you and Uncle Rick for Christmas Eve like we planned. I told him I couldn't do it. And he laughed, she said, staring at the floor. He actually laughed. He told me to stop being lazy. He said, "My mother did this for 30 years with 3 kids running around. You have no job, no kids, and nothing else to do. If you can't manage one dinner, what are you even bringing to this marriage?" She took a ragged breath. And then he said, if I ruined Christmas, if I embarrassed him in front of the extended family, there would be consequences. He looked at my wrist when he said it. The silence that followed was heavy. I went to the store to get the ingredients, she continued. I was standing in the produce aisle, holding a bag of onions, and I stopped. I couldn't breathe. I realized if I went back to that house, if I walked into that kitchen, I was going to die. Maybe not physically, but the last piece of me that was still Danielle, it would die. So I left the cart in the aisle. I walked out to the car. And I drove here. You did the right thing, I said fiercely. You saved yourself. Did I? She looked at me, trembling again. He's calling me. My phone is in my purse. It's buzzed 40 times. He's going to come here. He knows where you live. He's going to drag me back and... God, Chloe, I'm so scared. I looked at her phone, vibrating aggressively on the coffee table. The screen lit up with hubby and a picture of them smiling on their honeymoon, a lie captured in pixels. He's not taking you anywhere, I said. He will. You don't know him. He's relentless. He'll say I'm having a mental breakdown. He'll convince everyone. She was right. I didn't know him. Not really. I knew the mask. But I needed to know the monster. I needed to know exactly how he operated if I was going to destroy him. And then, looking at her tear-stained face, my face, an idea formed in the darkest, most dangerous corner of my brain. I stood up and walked to the hallway mirror. I looked at my reflection. Dark hair, shoulder length, green eyes, the slight arch of the left eyebrow. I looked back at Danielle. Same hair, same eyes, same eyebrow. Despite the stress, despite the weight loss she'd suffered, despite the red eyes, the underlying architecture was identical. We were monozygotic twins, mirrors. "Dee," I said slowly, watching my own reflection speak. "Come stand here." "Why?" she sniffled. "Just do it." She dragged herself off the couch and stood next to me. We looked into the glass. It was eerie. It was always eerie, but tonight it felt like looking at a before and after photo of a tragedy. I was the before, healthy, angry, alive. She was the after, broken, terrified, dim. But physically we were indistinguishable. "He doesn't look at you, does he?" I asked quietly. "What?" "Blake, when he snaps his fingers, when he yells, does he really look at you, into your eyes?" "No," she whispered. "He looks through me. Or he looks at his phone. Or the TV." "Good," I said. A cold smile touched my lips in the reflection. It didn't reach Danielle's face. "What are you thinking, Chloe?" Her voice was laced with panic. She knew that look. It was the look I had when we swapped classes in high school to pass her math test. It was the look I had before I slashed the tires of the guy who cheated on her in college. "You can't go back there," I said. "You're right. You'll break." "I know," she sobbed. "But someone has to go back." She froze. She turned her head slowly to look at me. Real time, not in the mirror. No, Chloe, absolutely not." "Think about it," I said, turning to face her. The adrenaline was hitting me now, clearing the fog, sharpening my senses. If you don't show up, he spins the narrative. He tells everyone you're crazy. He plays the victim. He wins. "I don't care if he wins," she cried. "I just want to be free." "You won't be free," I argued. "He'll hunt you. He'll harass you. Unless we get something on him. Unless we expose him." "Expose him how? It's his word against mine." "Not if we have evidence," I said. "Not if we have video. Not if the family sees exactly who he is." "He'll know." She shook her head frantically. "He'll know it's not me. I have a scar. You don't have the mole on your—" "We cover the mole with makeup," I cut her off. "I wear your clothes. I wear your ring. And as for him knowing, you just said he doesn't look at you. He sees a servant. He sees a prop." I grabbed her shoulders. I needed her to understand this. "I can do this, Dee. I can go into that house. I can play the part. I'll be submissive. I'll be quiet. I'll cook his damn turkey. And while I'm doing it, I'll be recording everything. I'll get Uncle Rick to loan me one of his pinhole cameras. We get the footage, we get the proof, and then we drop the nuke." "He'll hurt you," she whispered, tears spilling over again. If he grabs me," I said, my voice dropping an octave, "he's going to find out that this twin hits back." She stared at me. I could see the war inside her head, the terror of the plan versus the seductive, impossible hope of justice. The idea that someone could step in front of the bullet for her. "You'd really do that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You'd spend Christmas in hell for me?" "I'd burn hell down for you," I said. "Give me the ring." She looked at her hand, at the gold band that looked like a shackle. Slowly, painfully, she slid it off her finger. It left a pale indentation on her skin. She placed it in my palm. It was still warm from her body heat. It felt heavy, heavier than gold should be. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay." I closed my fist around the ring. The switch was on. We spent the next 2 hours in a rigorous, terrifying boot camp designed to erase 29 years of my personality. It started with the wardrobe. Danielle went to my closet, bypassing the leather jackets and the fitted jeans, and pulled out the few items I owned that she deemed safe. A pair of gray slacks I hadn't worn since a job interview 3 years ago, a navy blue button-down that was 2 sizes too big, and of course, the beige cardigan she had arrived in. "Put it on," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I pulled the cardigan over my shoulders. It felt itchy. Not because of the fabric, but because of what it represented. It smelled like her fear, a faint sour scent of sweat and expensive detergent. I buttoned it all the way to the top. "No," Danielle corrected immediately. She reached out and undid the top button. "Penelope says buttoning it all the way looks uptight, but leaving two open is provocative." Site start. You leave exactly one button undone. Site 98. I stared at the button. This was the level of insanity I was walking into. A world where a button was a moral statement. "Okay," I said, forcing my hands to rest at my sides. "How do I stand?" "You're too tall," she criticized, walking around me. Site start. You stand like you own the space. You need to stand like you're renting it and the lease is about to expire. Site 103. I slumped my shoulders forward. I collapsed my chest, trying to make my 5'7" frame occupy less oxygen. It felt unnatural, painful even, to compress my spine like that. "Hands," she instructed. Site start. "Never on your hips. Hips are aggressive. Clasp them in front of you, low, like you're waiting for permission to speak." Site 80-104. I clasped my hands. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't Chloe anymore. She was a ghost, a beige, apologetic ghost. "Now the voice," she whispered. "Say, 'I'm sorry, Blake.'" "I'm sorry, Blake," I said, using my normal speaking voice. "Too loud," she shook her head frantically. Site start. "And too confident. You sound like you're stating a fact. You need to sound like you're asking a question, like you're hoping he'll accept it." Site 106. I tried again. I pitched my voice higher, softer. I let a tremor of hesitation bleed into the vowels. I'm sorry, Blake?" "Better." She nodded, but her eyes were sad. Add, "I should have known better." Site start. That's his favorite phrase. Site 79. "I should have known better," I repeated. The words tasted like ash. I felt a surge of nausea. I was practicing the language of my sister's subjugation. I was learning how to be a victim so I could stop her from being one. Finally, she handed me her phone. Unlock code is 1104. It's his birthday, obviously. I took the phone. The weight of it felt significant, a black mirror into her personal hell. I looked at the missed calls. 42 now. "I'm ready," I lied. I wasn't ready. I wanted to vomit. But I looked at the bruise on her wrist, now fading to a sickly yellow, and I shoved the nausea down. "One last thing," she said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tube of lipstick. Pale pink, almost invisible. Penelope hates red. I applied the invisible lipstick. I was now fully undercover. I was Danielle. The drive to the suburbs took 30 minutes, but it felt like 30 seconds. My heart was doing frantic gymnastics in my chest the entire way. Sight start. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, then forced myself to relax them, remembering that Danielle drove with her hands at 10 and 2, terrified of making a mistake. Site 128. I pulled into the driveway. The house was a monument to suburban perfection. It was a 2-story colonial with a manicured lawn that looked like it had been cut with scissors. There was a wreath on the door that was perfectly centered. Tasteful white lights outlined the roof. Site start. It looked like a greeting card. Site 130. I knew better. It wasn't a home. It was a stage set. I killed the engine. The silence of the car was heavy. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror one last time. Hunched shoulders, eyes down, hands clasped. I got out of the car, grabbing Danielle's purse. The air was biting cold, cutting through the thin cardigan instantly, but I didn't zip my coat. Danielle wouldn't. She would prioritize looking presentable over hypothermia. I walked to the front door. I had the key in my hand. Danielle had given me her set, but I hesitated. This was the threshold. Once I crossed it, there was no time out, no do-overs. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, but in an artificial chemical way, like a Glade plug-in fighting a losing battle against the sterile scent of cleaning products. It was dead silent. "Hello?" I called out, softly. Site start, the Danielle voice. Site 136. There was no answer. I walked into the living room. Blake was there. He was sitting on the beige sectional, bathed in the blue light of the massive television. He was scrolling through his phone, his thumb moving with a rhythmic, hypnotic lethargy. He didn't look up. He didn't turn his head. Sight start. He didn't even acknowledge that the front door had opened and closed. Sight 35. I stood there for a full 10 seconds just watching him. He was handsome in a generic catalog way. Sharp jawline, perfectly styled hair even at 8 o'clock at night. But his posture screamed entitlement. He was a king on his throne, and I was just the peasant returning from the fields. "You're late," he said. Flat, monotone. Sight start. Still looking at his phone. Sight 135. My instinct, my Chloe instinct, screamed at me to say, "I'm not late. I'm an adult and traffic exists." I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Sight start. Traffic was difficult. Sight 136. He finally looked up. His eyes scanned me, not meeting my gaze, but checking me over like a supervisor inspecting an employee's uniform. "Mom's been waiting," he said, turning back to the TV. Sight start. "She's in the kitchen. Don't make her wait any longer." Sight 137. "No, are you okay? No, why did you run off?" No, I was worried. Just a reprimand and a redirection. I felt a cold, hard knot of hatred tighten in my stomach. It was useful, that hatred. It kept me focused. "Okay," I said. "I'll go see her." "And fix your hair," he added absent-mindedly. "It looks messy." I hadn't even taken my coat off yet. I walked toward the kitchen. The house was an open-concept nightmare, meaning there was nowhere to hide. As I crossed the threshold from the carpeted living room to the hardwood of the kitchen, I saw her. Penelope. She was standing by the island inspecting a bowl of fruit as if one of the apples had personally offended her. She was wearing a tailored gray dress that cost more than my car, her silver hair coiffed into a helmet of perfection. Sight start. She looked like a shark in pearls. Sight 3839. She turned as I entered. Her eyes were ice blue, and they immediately zeroed in on me. They didn't look at my face. They started at my feet and worked their way up, cataloging every flaw. "Well," she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, and dripping with disdain. Sight start. "Finally decided to grace us with your presence." Sight 140, 141. "I'm sorry, Penelope," I said, clasping my hands in front of me, hunching my shoulders. Sight start. I just needed some air." Sight 144. "Air," she repeated, tasting the word and finding it sour. Sight start. "You needed air on Christmas Eve. While the kitchen is in this state?" Sight 141. She gestured vaguely around the kitchen. It was spotless. Surgical grade spotless. The granite counters gleamed. The sink was empty. I didn't know what state she was referring to, unless clean was a crisis. "I'll get started right away," I promised. She walked toward me. I had to force myself not to step back. She invaded my personal space, standing just a little too close, smelling of expensive floral perfume and judgment. She reached out. I flinched internally, bracing for a slap, but she just plucked at the sleeve of my cardigan. "This cardigan," she sighed. A long, weary exhalation that suggested my knitwear was causing her physical pain. Sight start. "It's wrinkled, Danielle. Honestly, how many times must I tell you? You represent this family. When you look sloppy, we look sloppy." Sight 145. I didn't realize," I stammered. "I was in the car." "Excuses are not solutions." She cut me off. Sight start. "Go upstairs. Change. Iron that thing or burn it. I don't care. And then come back down. We have work to do. The family arrives at noon tomorrow, and at this rate, we'll be serving them takeout. Site 145. Yes, Penelope, I said. And Danielle? She called out as I turned to leave. I stopped. Yes? Try to smile, she said, baring her teeth in a mimicry of a grin. You look so dour. It's Christmas. Joy is a choice. I walked up the stairs, my legs shaking. Joy wasn't a choice in this house. It was a performance requirement. I changed quickly, splashing cold water on my face in the bathroom to stop the red flush of anger from giving me away. I took 3 deep breaths, staring at the stranger in the mirror, and went back down. Penelope was waiting at the kitchen island. She had a binder open. Here, she said, sliding a stack of papers across the granite. Site start, the schedule. Site 153. I picked it up. It was 3 pages long, single-spaced. I scanned the first page, and my brain nearly short-circuited. It wasn't a cooking schedule. It was a military operation. 600 hours. Begin turkey prep. Site start. Use the seasoning blend from the pantry. Rub under the skin, not over. Site 147, 162. 700 hours. Polish the silver. All of it. Site start. Even the serving spoons we aren't using. Site 155. 800 hours, peel potatoes. 3 varieties. Uncle Thomas likes mashed, so use the Yukons. Aunt Leslie prefers roasted, so use the reds. Site start. Blake only eats scalloped, so use the russets. Site 156. 900 hours. Iron the cloth napkins. Starched. Site start. A distinct crease down the center. Site 155. I flipped the page. Make the green bean casserole from scratch. Note, do not use canned soup. Make the bechamel yourself. Site start. Site 158. Prepare the shrimp cocktail. Note, arrange the shrimp in a perfect concentric circle. Site start. Site 157. Bake the dinner rolls. 2 dozen. Site start. They must be uniform in size. Site 157. Prepare the glazed carrots. Site start. Julienne cut only. Site 158. Make the cranberry sauce. Site start. Strain the seeds. Site 157. I looked up at her. Site start. Penelope, there are 47 items here. Site 160. And, she raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, it's just, for one person, in one morning. I let the sentence trail off, injecting the right amount of helplessness. My mother did this for 30 years, she said, reciting the line Danielle had warned me about. Site start. She did it with no help, 5 children, and a wood-burning stove. Surely you, with your modern appliances and your empty schedule, can manage a simple dinner. Site 152. She wasn't asking. She was daring me to fail. She wanted me to fail. If I failed, she could sigh and play the martyr and save the day. Of course, I said softly. I'll do my best. Don't do your best, dear, she said, closing the binder with a sharp snap. Site start. Do what's required. There's a difference. Site 145. Penelope left at 9:30. She had her own home to return to, presumably to sleep in a coffin lined with silk. Blake had gone up to his man cave an hour ago and hadn't emerged. I was alone in the kitchen. I looked at the list. Item 1. The turkey seasoning. Use Penelope's secret recipe blend, located in the small glass jar on the top shelf of the pantry. Do not waste it. Site start. It is irreplaceable. Site 162-163. I dragged a step stool over to the pantry. I found the jar. It was an old mason jar with a handwritten label that said, Fletcher Family Secret, 1985. It looked like holy water. I unscrewed the lid. I sniffed it. I frowned. I dipped a wet finger in and tasted it. Salt, garlic powder, onion powder, paprika, maybe a hint of dried thyme. That was it. I stood there on the step stool holding the irreplaceable family legacy, and I almost laughed. It wasn't secret. It was Lori's seasoning salt with some extra garlic. Site start. You could buy the ingredients for $3 at a gas station. Site 164-165. I looked at the jar, then at the 3-page list of impossible demands. A shift occurred in my chest. A small dark gear clicked into place. If the secret recipe was a lie, what else was a lie? What else could be manipulated? She wanted obedience? I would give her obedience. I would follow her instructions so literally, so maliciously, perfectly that she wouldn't know what hit her. I climbed down from the stool. I didn't put the jar back. I set it on the counter next to the turkey. "Okay, Penelope," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's cook." But first, I needed insurance. I reached into the deep pocket of the beige cardigan and pulled out the device. I had picked it up from Uncle Rick's mailbox on my way out of the city. We hadn't spoken. I didn't want to involve him directly until I had to. But I had texted him a code word we established years ago. Red Sparrow. He knew what it meant. He left the gear. It was a tiny camera, a black cube no bigger than a die, wireless, high definition. Site start, battery life of 12 hours. Site 203. I needed a vantage point. It had to cover the dining room table and the kitchen island. The open concept floor plan, which I hated 5 minutes ago, was now my best friend. I scanned the room. The bookshelf, too low, the chandelier, too obvious. My eyes landed on the Christmas tree in the corner of the dining room. It was huge, overloaded with ornaments. I walked over to it. My hands were shaking. If Blake came down, if he saw me... I found a spot among the branches about 5 feet up, a dense cluster of silver balls and fake pine cones. I nestled the black cube deep into the green plastic needles. I angled it toward the table. I pulled out my phone, my real phone, hidden in my bra, and opened the app Uncle Rick had installed for me. The feed popped up. Crisp, clear, wide-angle view of the dining room. I heard a floorboard creak upstairs. I froze. Steps, heavy, coming down the hall. I shoved my phone back into my dress. I stepped away from the tree, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "What are you doing?" Blake was standing at the top of the stairs, holding an empty glass. I spun around. I was just fixing an ornament. It looked like it was about to fall. He stared at me. The silence stretched, thin and tight. "Stop messing with the decorations," he grunted, descending the stairs. "Mom spent hours on that tree. You'll just ruin it." He walked past me into the kitchen, poured himself water, and walked back up. He didn't look at the tree. He didn't check. I let out a breath that felt like it had been held for a lifetime. The trap was set. Now I just had to survive until dinner. Around 10:30, Blake finally emerged from the kitchen after getting his water. I was pretending to wipe down the already pristine counter, my back to him, counting the seconds in my head. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. I was waiting for the footsteps to fade up the stairs. They didn't. He stopped in the doorway. I could feel his eyes on my spine. It wasn't a gaze of desire or affection. It was the heavy, expectant stare of a customer waiting for a waiter to notice an empty glass. "Danielle," he said. I turned around slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the 3rd button of his shirt. "Yes, Blake?" I left my phone charger in the den, the white one. He didn't ask me to get it. He just stated the location of an object. It was a command disguised as a statement of fact. "Okay," I said, making no move to get it. "Do you want me to bring it up when I come to bed?" He sighed. A short, sharp puff of air through his nose. Then he raised his right hand. Snap. The sound was louder than a gunshot in the quiet house. It was a crisp, dry friction of skin against skin. "Now, Danielle," he said, his voice dropping to that patronizing register one uses for a slow toddler. "My battery is at 4%. I need it now." My body reacted before my brain could intervene. My hands curled into fists at my sides. A line of heat shot up my neck, hot and prickly. In my old life, my real life, if a man snapped his fingers at me, I would have broken them. I imagined it vividly, grabbing his index finger, twisting it back until the ligament popped, watching that smug expression crumble into shock. But I wasn't Chloe. I was Danielle. And Danielle didn't break fingers. Danielle fetched chargers. "I'm sorry," I whispered, forcing my hands to unclench. I didn't realize it was urgent. "I'll get it right away." "Thank you," he said, already turning away, dismissing me. "And bring me a glass of ice water. This one is room temperature." I watched him walk away. I went to the den. I found the charger. I went to the fridge. I got the ice. Every movement was mechanical, jerky, fueled by a rage so potent it made my vision blur at the edges. I was vibrating with the effort of holding it in. I walked up the stairs, delivered the items to his outstretched hand without making eye contact, and retreated. "Good night," he muttered, closing his bedroom door in my face. I stood in the hallway, staring at the wood grain, breathing hard. Just 24 hours, I told myself. Just 24 hours, and then I burn this whole kingdom down. I went to the guest room. Thankfully, Danielle had mentioned that Blake required absolute silence to sleep, so they had maintained separate bedrooms for the last 6 months. She had framed it as him being a light sleeper. I now realized it was just another form of control, dictating when and where intimacy happened on his terms. I closed the door and locked it. The click of the lock echoed in the silence. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood. This room was sterile. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige bedding, no photos, no personality. It looked like a hotel room where people went to disappear. I changed into the pajamas Danielle had packed, a modest, high-necked flannel set that was purely functional. I crawled into the bed. The sheets were stiff, smelling of too much starch. I couldn't sleep. Every sound the housemaid set my nerves on fire. The furnace kicking on sounded like a growl. The wind rattling the window pane sounded like someone trying to get in. I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying the snap over and over again. I was terrified I would talk in my sleep. What if he came in? What if I woke up and forgot who I was? What if I woke up as Chloe and punched him in the face before I remembered the plan? I grabbed my phone, my real phone, from under the pillow where I'd hidden it. I typed a text to Danielle, keeping the brightness all the way down. "Me." He snapped his fingers. I didn't kill him. I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. I watched the 3 dots appear, then disappear, then appear again. "Danielle, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Did he touch you?" Me. "No, he just treated me like a Roomba. Try to sleep, Dee. I've got this." I put the phone away. I didn't have this. I was lying in a stranger's house, wearing a stranger's clothes, waiting for a dawn that would bring an army of critics to my door. I pulled the stiff duvet up to my chin and squeezed my eyes shut, forcing my breathing to slow down, mimicking sleep until the real thing finally, mercifully, dragged me under. The door flew open. There was no knock. No polite "good morning." Just the sudden, violent intrusion of the door hitting the stopper and the overhead light flicking on. I gasped, sitting bolt upright, my heart slamming against my ribs. For a second, I didn't know where I was. I was disoriented, blinded by the sudden 60-watt glare. "Rise and shine!" Penelope stood in the doorway. It was exactly 6 o'clock in the morning. She was fully dressed, not in a robe, not in pajamas. She was wearing a crisp navy pantsuit, her hair perfectly sprayed into place, her makeup flawless. She looked like she had been awake for hours, waiting for the clock to strike 6 so she could execute this raid. "The turkey won't cook itself, Danielle," she chirped, clapping her hands together once. A sharp, percussive sound. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shield them from the assault of light. "Penelope, it's 6 in the morning. It's 6:01. she corrected, tapping her wristwatch. "You're already behind schedule." "I expect the bird in the oven by 6:45 sharp. I've set out the roasting pan. Chop, chop." She didn't leave. She stood there, watching me in bed, a small smile playing on her lips. It was a power move. She was establishing dominance in the most intimate space possible. She was telling me that even my sleep belonged to her schedule. "I need to get dressed," I said, clutching the blanket to my chest. "Could you—" "Oh, don't be prudish," she waved a hand dismissively. "We're all family here. But fine, I'll be downstairs checking the silver. Don't make me come back up here." She turned and marched out, leaving the door wide open. I sat there for 5 seconds, trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and adrenaline. The audacity, the sheer, unadulterated entitlement. I threw the covers off. "Okay," I muttered to the empty room. "You want breakfast? I'll give you a show." By 6:30, I was in the kitchen, apron on, hands covered in potato starch. The list lay on the counter like a sacred text I was obligated to desecrate. Item 3, potatoes. A, Yukon Gold, mashed. Peel completely, no eyes. Boil in salted water. B, red potatoes, roasted, quartered, skin on, rosemary only. Russet potatoes, scalloped, sliced 1/8 inch thick. Mandolin required. I looked at the pile of tubers. It was absurd. Who makes 3 different potato dishes for one meal? A tyrant, that's who. A tyrant who wants to keep the peasants too busy to revolt. I picked up a Yukon Gold. I peeled it. But I left a little strip of skin, just a tiny, thin ribbon on the bottom. I picked up a red potato. The instructions said quartered. I cut it into 6. I picked up the russet. The instructions demanded a mandolin for perfect, uniform slices. I picked up a knife. I cut them by hand. They were close to uniform, but not machine perfect. Some were a little thick. Some were a little thin. "What are you doing?" I jumped. Penelope was hovering over my shoulder like a vulture. "Peeling potatoes," I said, keeping my voice small. She reached into the bowl of mashed prep and pulled out the one with the skin strip. She held it up like it was a severed finger. "Sloppy," she hissed. "Uncle Thomas hates texture in his mash. Fix it." "I'm sorry," I said, taking the potato back. "I'll be more careful." "And these," she pointed to the roasted ones, "those are not quarters, Danielle. Those are wedges. There's a difference in cook time. Do you want them to burn?" I thought, maybe they'd cook faster this way. I offered a weak excuse. "We don't think," she snapped. "We follow the recipe. Do it again." She walked away to inspect the table setting. I didn't do it again. I waited until she was out of sight, and I threw the wedges into the roasting pan exactly as they were. I peeled the skin off the Yukon, but I accidentally dropped a pinch of sugar into the salted water. Just a pinch. Not enough to taste sweet, but enough to make it taste wrong. Confusing. It was petty. It was childish. It was the only power I had. At 8 o'clock, I moved on to the appetizers. The list called for a classic cheese board. I opened the fridge. It was stocked like a survival bunker for a French aristocrat. There were blocks of standard cheddar and Swiss in the drawer, but on the top shelf there was a separate collection. Truffle brie, aged Gouda with crystals, a goat cheese log rolled in edible flowers. These were clearly expensive. These were clearly special. I remember Danielle mentioning that Penelope had bought fancy stuff for a New Year's Eve party she was hosting next week. I looked at the list. Prepare cheese board. Arrange artistically. It didn't specify which cheese. I smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that felt alien on Danielle's face. I took the New Year's cheese, all of it. I unwrapped the $40 brie. I sliced the 20-year-aged Gouda. I crumbled the floral goat cheese. I arranged them on the heavy slate board, fanning out the imported crackers that were also sitting on the do not touch shelf. It looked magnificent. It looked like a magazine cover. I set it on the island just as Penelope walked back in. She stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes bulged. "Danielle!" She strangled out the word. What is that? The cheese board, I said, wiping my hands on my apron, looking up with wide, innocent doe eyes. You said to make it look nice. Those, she pointed a shaking finger at the brie, those are for New Year's. Those are the imported cheeses from the specialty market downtown. I told you specifically. No, I interrupted softly. I reached for the list and held it up. The list just says cheese board. And these were the only cheeses in the fridge that looked nice. The others were just sandwich slices. I watched her brain misfire. She couldn't admit that her precious list, her tool of absolute control, was flawed. She couldn't admit she had been vague. To do so would be to admit imperfection. Her face went a shade of puce that clashed with her navy suit. She opened her mouth, closed it, and then inhaled sharply through her nose. Well, she said, her voice tight enough to snap a piano wire, I suppose we'll just have to eat them now, since you've already contaminated the wrappers. I'm so sorry, I said, injecting a wobble into my voice. Should I go buy more? Don't be ridiculous, she snapped. There's no time, just try to use your brain for the rest of the day, please. She stormed out. I looked at the truffle brie. I broke off a piece and ate it. It tasted like victory. The dining room table was the final battlefield before the guests arrived. The instructions were explicit. Use the grandmother's heirloom china, the gold-rimmed set. Hand wash only. I opened the china cabinet. There were 2 sets. One was clearly the heirloom set. Intricate gold leaf, delicate floral patterns, probably worth more than my car. The other set was, well, it was a very good knockoff. The second best china, as Danielle called it. It had a gold rim, but it was painted, not leaf. The flowers were slightly less detailed. To the untrained eye, from a distance of 3 feet, they were identical. To Penelope, they were night and day. I reached for the second best set. I laid the table with precision. Forks on the left, knives on the right, blade facing in. I folded the napkins. I placed the inferior plates at each of the 15 settings. When I was finished, I stepped back. It looked perfect. Blake came down the stairs, showered and smelling of expensive cologne. He walked past the table without looking. Is the coffee ready? He asked. Yes, I said, in the pot. Penelope entered from the living room. She did her usual scan. She looked at the table. She paused. She squinted. She walked over to the head of the table and picked up a dinner plate. She ran her thumb over the rim. Danielle, she said slowly, turning to face me, is this the heirloom set? My heart hammered, but I kept my face blank. Yes, Penelope. It feels light, she said, turning the plate over. There was no maker's mark on the bottom of the knockoffs. I washed them carefully, just like you said, I lied. Is something wrong? She looked at the plate. Then she looked at the cabinet. The glass doors were closed, the interior dark. She couldn't see the real stack hidden in the back without walking over there and opening it. She looked back at me. I held her gaze, blinking slowly, radiating confusion. Gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. I thought hysterically. No, she muttered, setting the plate back down. She couldn't bring herself to accuse me of swapping them, because that would imply she couldn't tell the difference between her precious heirloom and a department store replica. Her vanity was her weakness. It just looks different in this light. Ensure the glasses are spotted free. Yes, Penelope, I said. She walked away, looking over her shoulder at the table one last time, a frown etched deep into her forehead. She knew something was off. She could feel it, but she couldn't prove it without looking crazy. I let out a slow breath. The guests would be here in 20 minutes. The stage was set. The camera was rolling. The cheese was wrong. The potatoes were sabotaged. The plates were fake. Now all I had to do was survive the performance. Blake was still standing in the kitchen, leaning against the counter I had just sanitized, scrolling through his phone. He was occupying the exact center of the workspace, a human obstacle I had to navigate around while carrying hot pans. "Babe," he said without looking up, "coffee." I paused. I was holding a tray of steaming roasted carrots, the ones I had cut into defiant wedges rather than julienne strips. My hands were full. The coffee pot was literally 6 inches from his left elbow. If he shifted his weight, he would bump into it. "I have the carrots, Blake," I said, my voice muffled by the Danielle filter. "The pot is right there." He finally looked up. His brow furrowed, a genuine expression of confusion, as if the coffee pot were a complex piece of alien machinery he wasn't qualified to operate. "I don't know which mug is mine," he said. "The white one," I whispered. "It's in the cabinet above the pot." "Just pour it for me," he sighed, the sound heavy with the burden of dealing with an uncooperative wife. "You know how I like the cream. If I do it, I'll mess it up and then we'll waste coffee." Weaponized incompetence. It was a masterclass. He wasn't saying, "I won't do it." He was saying, "I can't do it as well as you," framing his laziness as a compliment to my skill. I set the carrots down. I walked over. I reached past him to get the mug, smelling his cologne, sandalwood and arrogance. I poured the coffee. I added the cream. I stirred it. I handed it to him. "Thanks," he muttered, taking a sip. Then he frowned. "It's not very hot." "It's been sitting for 10 minutes, I said. "Well, make a fresh pot before the guests get here," he commanded, turning back to his phone. "Uncle Thomas likes it scalding. Don't embarrass me with lukewarm bean water." I stared at the back of his neck. There was a specific vertebrae right at the base of his skull. I imagined, just for a fleeting second, taking the lukewarm pot and introducing it to that vertebrae. "Of course," I said. "Fresh pot." Coming right up. At noon, the doorbell rang. The sound was like a starting pistol. Penelope emerged from the living room, her face transforming instantly. The scowl vanished. The critical squint smoothed out. In their place appeared a radiant, welcoming smile that reached her eyes, but didn't quite warm them. "They're here," she trilled. "Danielle, wipe your hands. Take off that apron. You look like the help." I stripped off the apron and tossed it into the pantry. I smoothed down the terrible beige cardigan. I followed her to the door. Aunt Leslie and Uncle Thomas were the first through the breach, carrying gifts and a bottle of wine. "Merry Christmas," Penelope cried, embracing Leslie. "Oh, you look wonderful. That coat is divine." "Thank you, Penny," Leslie beamed. She turned to me. "And Danielle, look at you." Before I could answer, Penelope rested a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy, like a talon. "Doesn't she look tired?" Penelope said, her voice dropping to a sympathetic purr. "She's been struggling in the kitchen all morning. I tried to tell her to prep yesterday, but you know how the young ones are, always leaving things to the last minute." "Oh," Leslie's smile faltered. "Well, I'm sure it will be delicious." "We hope so," Penelope whispered, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "She tries so hard, bless her heart." I stood there, frozen. She had just rewritten reality in real time. She was the one who demanded the fresh prep. She was the one who banned me from starting yesterday. But to the world, I was just the disorganized daughter-in-law, and she was the patient saint tolerating my chaos. Cousin Jennifer arrived next, trailing a husband and 2 kids. "Danielle!" Jennifer hugged me. She smelled like peppermint and vodka. "How are you?" "We haven't seen you in months." "She's been very withdrawn lately," Blake answered for me, stepping up and slipping an arm around my waist. His grip was tight. Too tight. "We've been worried about her moods, haven't we, Mom?" "Very worried," Penelope nodded somberly. "But we're working on it. Family supports family." I looked at Jennifer. She looked uncomfortable, shifting her gaze away. They were painting me as unstable before the first course was even served. It was brilliant. If I snapped later, they would just nod and say, "See, Penelope was right. She's unstable." I forced a smile. "I'm fine," I said. "Just busy. Who wants cheese?" We moved to the dining room. The table looked impressive, laden with the food I had spent 6 hours sweating over. The fake china gleamed under the chandelier. The stolen cheese board was already half decimated. Apparently, the New Year's brie was a hit. "Everyone sit, sit," Penelope commanded, directing traffic. "Thomas, you're at the head. Blake next to me. Danielle. You can squeeze in on the end there, near the kitchen door. Easier for you to clear the plates." I took my seat. It was the only chair that didn't have a direct view of the window. I was sitting in the servant's spot. "Let us pray," Penelope announced. We bowed our heads. I kept my eyes open, staring at my hands clenched in my lap. I could feel the camera in the Christmas tree blinking its silent red eye. "Dear Lord," Penelope began, her voice trembling with theatrical piety, "we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for the roof over our heads and the warmth in this home. We thank you for the hands that grew this food, for the farmers, for the grocers." She paused. "We ask that you bless this family with patience," she continued. "Help us to guide those among us who are lost. Help us to be firm in our love, even when it is difficult. And please, Lord, let this food nourish us, despite the challenges in its preparation. Amen." "Amen," the table chorused. She hadn't thanked the cook. She had thanked the grocer, and she had asked God to help them tolerate me. I looked up. Blake was watching me. He gave me a small, tight smile and reached under the table. He squeezed my knee. It wasn't affectionate. It was a vice grip, his fingers digging into the muscle. "Smile," the grip said. "Look grateful." I smiled. I looked grateful. "Let's eat," I said. I watched nervously, or pretended to be nervous, as Uncle Thomas carved the turkey. It was beautiful. Golden brown skin, steam rising in ribbons, the meat falling away from the bone. He took a bite. "Mmm," he hummed. "Penny, this is fantastic. Best bird we've had in years." "Oh, really?" Penelope looked sharp. She took a small bite of the white meat. She chewed. She frowned. She chewed again, slower this time, as if searching for a bone fragment or a shard of glass. The table waited. "It's flavorful," she said finally. "But don't you find it a bit dry?" "Dry?" Jennifer asked, mouthful of turkey. "It's dripping, Aunt Penny. It's really good." "No, no," Penelope insisted, putting her fork down. "It catches in the throat. Danielle, did you baste it every 30 minutes like I told you?" I hadn't basted it once. I had rubbed it with butter and ignored it for 4 hours. I thought I did," I lied, looking down at my plate. "Well, clearly you lost track of time," Penelope sighed, picking up her wine glass. "It's a shame. A 20-pound bird ruined by lack of attention. Pass the gravy, Blake. We'll need to drown it to get it down." The table went silent. Aunt Leslie looked at her turkey, which was perfectly moist, then at Penelope, then at me. She looked confused. She was trusting her sister-in-law's words over the evidence in her own mouth. That was Penelope's power. She warped reality until people doubted their own senses. "I think it's fine," Uncle Thomas tried to interject. "You'd eat cardboard if I salted it, Tom." Penelope dismissed him with a laugh. "It's dry, but we appreciate the effort, don't we? It's the thought that counts." Then came the potatoes. The sabotage had been subtle, but effective. Uncle Thomas took a scoop of the mashed potatoes, the ones I had spiked with sugar. He took a bite. His eyebrows shot up. "Oh," he said. "These are interesting." "What's wrong?" Penelope asked, hawk-eyed. "Nothing, just sweet. Did you use sweet potatoes, Danielle?" "No," I said, "just Yukons." Penelope dove in. She tasted the mash, her face contorted. "Sugar," she spat. "You put sugar in the mashed potatoes." I think I might have grabbed the wrong canister," I stammered. "The white powders look so similar." "Incompetence," she muttered, pushing the plate away. "Absolute incompetence. Who mistakes sugar for salt?" A child knows the difference. She moved to the roasted potatoes, the wedges. And these, she poked a wedge with her fork, raw in the middle, I assume, since you refused to cut them properly? She didn't even taste them. She just declared them raw. They're edible, I suppose, she said, looking around the table for agreement. If you're starving, but certainly not up to the Fletcher standard. She looked at me. Her eyes were hard, cold flints. I gave you a list, Danielle, a simple list, and you managed to ruin the turkey, sweeten the potatoes, and serve whatever this is. It feels intentional. Is it? Are you trying to ruin Christmas? The table held its breath. Blake cleared his throat. He put his hand on my shoulder again. Mom, go easy on her, he said. For a second, I thought he was defending me. She's not like you, he continued, looking at me with pity. She doesn't have your domestic instincts. She tries her best. It's just that her best isn't... Well, it's not this. He gestured to the room, to the house, to the standard of perfection I had failed to meet. She tries her best. That was it. That was the phrase Danielle hated most. It wasn't an insult. It was a tombstone. It buried her competence, her intelligence, and her worth under a layer of patronizing pity. Something clicked in my chest. It was a physical sensation, like a safety catch disengaging on a rifle. I looked at the camera in the tree. The red light blinked once. Recorded. I looked at Penelope, who was looking at me with triumph. She had won. She had humiliated me, proven I was useless, and established her dominance all before dessert. I looked at Blake, who was smugly sipping his wine, confident that his wife was sufficiently cowed. I stopped hunching. I sat up straight. I rolled my shoulders back, letting the spine lengthen to its full height. I unclasped my hands from my lap and placed them on the table, flat and firm. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the dry turkey and the ruined potatoes. You're right, Penelope, I said. My voice was different. The tremor was gone. The soft, airy quality of Danielle's submission had evaporated. In its place was my voice, Chloe's voice. Deeper, resonant, steel wrapped in velvet. The table quieted. Even the kids stopped chewing. I really should have done better, I continued, meeting her eyes. Direct contact. No flinching. I mean, with all the guidance you gave me. The list, the instructions. It's shameful, really. Penelope blinked. She sensed the shift, but she couldn't identify it. It was like watching a rabbit suddenly bare fangs. Well, she faltered slightly, admitting it is the first step. Perhaps next year... Oh, let's not worry about next year, I interrupted her. I smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. Let's focus on right now, because I have one more surprise, dessert. Dessert? Blake asked, frowning. Blake? You made the cheesecake? I did, I said, standing up. Penelope's famous peppermint cheesecake, the one with the secret family recipe. I put air quotes around secret family recipe. I'll go get it, I said, and I think everyone is going to find this part very educational. I walked to the kitchen. I didn't shuffle. I strode. The game was over. The war had begun. I returned from the kitchen carrying the cheesecake. It was a masterpiece, sitting on a crystal pedestal I had found in the back of the pantry. The white chocolate ganache was smooth, the crushed peppermint candy arranged in a perfect ring. It looked exactly like the picture in the binder. It also looked exactly like the picture on my phone. I set it down in the center of the table. Oh, finally, Penelope sighed, recovering her composure. At least it looks correct, though looks can be deceiving, as we saw with the potatoes. It is correct, I said, remaining standing. I followed the recipe to the letter, but I did find something interesting while I was baking. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Not Danielle's phone. My phone. I was curious about the history of this recipe, I said, swiping open the browser. You always said it was your grandmother's, right? From the 1920s? Of course. Penelope stiffened. It's a Fletcher family legacy." "That's so strange," I said, my voice dripping with faux confusion, "because I found this archive from Southern Living magazine, December 2015, page 43. I held the phone up. The screen was bright. Everyone could see it. The image on the screen was identical to the cake on the table. The article is titled, "Festive Cheesecakes for the Modern Hostess," I read aloud, and the recipe, well, it's word for word identical, down to the 1/4 teaspoon of peppermint extract in the crust. The silence in the room was absolute. It wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. I don't know what you're talking about," Penelope stammered. Her face went from pale to a blotchy red. "That's ridiculous. They must have stolen it from us." "In 2015? I asked. "Unless your grandmother was a time traveler, Penelope, you've been passing off a magazine recipe as an heirloom for a decade." Jennifer stifled a giggle. She quickly turned it into a cough, but the damage was done. The facade had cracked. "This is disrespectful." Blake slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. "You are embarrassing my mother in her own home." "It's your home, Blake," I corrected him. "Or it's supposed to be. But she runs it, doesn't she? Just like she runs you." The air in the room changed. It went from awkward holiday tension to something dangerous. Violence hung heavy in the ozone, smelling like ozone and roasted meat. "What has gotten into you?" Penelope hissed. She stood up, her chair screeching against the hardwood. "You have been difficult, clumsy, and rude all day. And now this? Accusing me of lying?" "I'm not accusing you," I said calmly. "I'm citing my sources. There's a difference." "Apologize," Blake growled. He stood up too, towering over the table. He was using his size now, expanding his chest, projecting threat. "Apologize to her right now, Danielle." "No," I said. The word hung there. Simple. Final. "Excuse me?" Blake blinked. He looked like he had been slapped. Danielle never said no. Danielle said, "I'm sorry and okay, and I'll try harder." "I said no," I repeated. "I'm not apologizing for the truth, and I'm not apologizing for the turkey, which was perfect, by the way, or the potatoes, which you two bullied me about just to make yourselves feel big. You are hysterical," Penelope declared, playing her favorite card. "She's having a breakdown. Blake, call the doctor." "She's clearly unwell." "I'm perfectly sane," I said. "In fact, I'm the only sane person in this room. The rest of you are just enabling a narcissist and her golden boy." "That's enough," Blake shouted. His face was purple. The veins in his neck were bulging. "Get in the kitchen, now." "Make me," I challenged. He moved fast. For a big man, he was quick. He rounded the corner of the table in 2 strides, his hand reaching out for me. It was the same motion Danielle had described. The grab, the squeeze, the drag. He wasn't aiming for my shoulder. He was aiming for my wrist. My heart hammered, but my mind was ice cold. This was the moment. The camera was recording. The family was watching. His hand closed around my left wrist. His grip was crushing. "You're coming with me," he snarled, pulling. He expected resistance. He expected me to pull back, to cower, to cry. He expected Danielle. Instead, I stepped into him. I didn't pull away. I drove my body weight forward, confusing his center of gravity. My right hand shot up and clamped onto his wrist, the one holding me. I dug my thumb into the pressure point on the inside of his radius. Hard. He gasped, his grip loosening instinctively from the shock of pain. I ripped my hand free. "Don't touch me." I didn't shout it. I said it with a quiet, lethal intensity that froze him in place. "You—" He stared at me. His eyes darted over my face, searching for the woman he had broken. He couldn't find her. "Who are you?" "That's a great question, Blake," I said, stepping back and smoothing my cardigan. "Who am I?" The front door opened. "Sorry to interrupt dinner," a deep voice boomed from the hallway. Uncle Rick walked in. He was wearing his heavy winter coat and holding a tablet. He looked like an executioner who had just clocked in. "Rick," Aunt Leslie gasped, "what are you doing here?" "Delivery," Rick said. He walked straight to the dining table and set the tablet down in front of Uncle Thomas. He pressed play. The screen lit up. It was the footage from the last 12 hours. We watched in silence. We saw Penelope barging in at 6 in the morning. We heard her calling me incompetent. We saw the list of 47 items. We saw Blake snapping his fingers. We saw him ignoring me while I served him coffee. And then the dinner footage. "This turkey is rather dry, don't you think?" Penelope's voice tinny on the recording. "She tries her best." Blake's voice dripping with condescension. And finally the grab, the footage from 10 seconds ago, Blake lunging, his hand clamping onto my wrist. "My God," Aunt Leslie whispered. She looked at Penelope. "Penny, you said she was lazy. You said she needed help." "She does," Penelope shrieked, her composure shattering. "Look at her. She tricked us. She set us up. This is entrapment." "It's not entrapment, Mom," Uncle Thomas said, his voice heavy with disgust. "It's a mirror." "And there's more," I said. I pulled up the photo on my phone, the photo of Danielle's wrist from yesterday, the purple bruises, the fingerprints. I held it up to Blake's face. "Remember this?" I asked. "From the wine incident. You squeezed her so hard you left your signature." Blake went pale. He looked at the photo, then at the camera in the tree, then at his family. He saw his reputation dissolving in real time. "It was an accident," he mumbled. "I didn't mean to." "You never mean to," I said, "but you always do." "Where is she?" Blake whispered. He looked terrified now. "Where is Danielle?" I reached up and wiped the lipstick off my mouth. I unbuttoned the top button of the beige cardigan. I stood taller, shedding the last remnants of the disguise. "My name is Chloe," I said, "and Danielle is safe. She's somewhere you can't snap your fingers at her." You're the twin," Penelope breathed. "The wild one." "The protective one," I corrected. "And here is what is going to happen." I walked over to the sideboard where I had left my purse. I pulled out a manila envelope. "These are divorce papers," I said, tossing them onto the table. They landed in the middle of the cheesecake. "Danielle signed them this morning. You will sign them, Blake. You will agree to an uncontested split. No alimony. You keep the house. She keeps her sanity." "I'm not signing anything," Blake said, trying to regain some bravado. "This is insane. She abandoned me." "If you don't sign them," I said, pointing to the tablet, "this video goes online. It goes to your boss at the firm. It goes to your pastor. It goes to every single person in this town who thinks the Fletchers are a perfect family." I looked at Penelope. "And you," I said. "If you ever try to contact her, if you ever show up at her job, if you ever send a flying monkey to check on her, I will release the raw footage of you admitting you lied about the grandmother's recipe. Petty? Yes, but it will destroy your social standing at the country club faster than a scandal." Penelope's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She knew I was right. Her social currency was her only real asset, and I was holding a match to it. "You have 24 hours, I said. "Come on, Rick." I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I heard Aunt Leslie start to cry, and I heard Uncle Thomas say, "I think you should leave, Penny." It was the best Christmas carol I had ever heard. I drove back to the city in silence, the adrenaline slowly draining out of me, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. Uncle Rick followed me in his truck, a silent guardian. When I got to my apartment, Danielle was sitting exactly where I had left her. She was wrapped in my duvet, holding a cold cup of tea. She looked up as I entered. Her eyes were huge, filled with terror and hope. Did it work?" she whispered. I sat down next to her. I took off the beige cardigan and threw it into the trash can in the corner. "It worked," I said. "He signed." "He signed," she gasped. "Just like that?" "Well, he hasn't signed yet," I admitted. "But he will, unless he wants the world to see him trying to break my wrist." "He tried to." She covered her mouth. "He tried," I said, showing her my wrist. There was a red mark, but no bruise. But I caught him. And Dee. The family saw it. Leslie saw it. Thomas saw it. They know. She started to cry. But this time, it wasn't the hopeless, broken weeping of last night. It was the release of a pressure valve. It was relief. "I'm free," she sobbed. "I'm really free." "You're free," I promised, pulling her into a hug. "And you never have to eat that dry turkey again." She laughed. It was a wet, shaky sound, but it was a laugh. "Merry Christmas, Chloe," she whispered into my shoulder. "Merry Christmas, Dee." 3 months later, it's been 90 days since the Christmas massacre, as Uncle Rick affectionately calls it. The divorce was finalized last week. Blake signed everything without a fight. His lawyer told him that the video footage was radioactive and that he should cut his losses before he ended up on the evening news. He sold the house a month ago. Apparently, he couldn't afford the mortgage without Danielle's silent management of the budget, or maybe he just couldn't handle the ghosts. Penelope has gone dark. According to Aunt Leslie, who now texts me regularly, Penelope stepped down from the church committee due to health reasons. The rumor is that someone leaked the cheesecake recipe scandal to the grapevine, and she couldn't show her face at the potluck. I can neither confirm nor deny my involvement in that leak. As for Danielle, she's living with me for now. She got a job at a small bakery. Ironic, I know, but she loves it. She comes home smelling like vanilla and yeast, and yesterday she bought a bright red sweater. She's still healing. She flinches when people move too fast. She apologizes too much. She has nightmares where she hears snapping fingers. But this morning, I watched her make coffee. She poured it into her favorite mug, added exactly the amount of cream she wanted, and drank it sitting by the window. She didn't ask for permission. She didn't check a list. She just existed. She looked at me and smiled, a real smile. "I think I'm going to dye my hair," she said. "Maybe pink." "Do it," I said. "Pink is aggressive." "Good," she said, taking a sip. "I think I'm ready to be a little aggressive." The beige cardigan is still in the landfill where it belongs. And the Fletchers? They're just a bad memory, fading a little more every day. Oh. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.